She's doing okay. Yeah, she is. She is able to walk a few steps now, which is nice.
What happened?
What did you do? What did you do, Mike? What did you do, Mike?
It was a failed murder attempt.
The weekly sparring.
Just literally like tripped up in the street over
Jesus.
like an uneven bit of floor. It was the most embarrassingly like simple thing, but yeah, she's doing all right now. It was weird not being able to go to A&E with her. That was strange because obviously you're not letting people.
Is that a COVID precaution? Is that what that was about?
Yeah, but it didn't occur to me. Like we went there, got the Uber, got over there, got to the hospital, and like the guy at the door of the hospital, like doing COVID tests on people as they were going in, was like, "Oh, you can't come in," and it was this moment of like, "Oh, I'm an idiot. Of course I can't come in." No, sorry. I feel just very British situation of feeling absolutely embarrassed to have even wasted his time.
Terribly sorry for your ridiculous.
Terribly sorry. Gosh, oh,
My good sir, you are a cunt.
They're like putting a black bag over Carrie's head and dragging her off into an unmarked van, and you're like, "Oh, apologies. I didn't really mean
sorry.
to."
Gosh,
I should have known better. Yes, you're right. It is odd. There's people people that are having babies right now and stuff like that. You're like, dads, you have to wait in the hall. Or like, no. Or what was the deal with Corey's dad? Corey Barlog's dad.
He's by himself. That's all I know.
Yeah, I was like, dude,
I
that is.
saw he was sick with something.
Oh yeah, I mean, he has COVID.
Was it COVID? I saw on Twitter, and then I couldn't remember precisely.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I was like, I'm not gonna read Corey's texts about his dad, but basically he has COVID, and it's just a bummer. It's just a real bummer. Things are still happening. Really sucks.
Well, and just like in Mike's situation, just the things that we don't think about. It's affecting other people, right? And then all of a sudden, it like somehow tertiarily affects us. And like Carrie doesn't have COVID, but Carrie has to go to the hospital to fix a broken foot, and then that impacts Mike. Is like people don't. It's like when the writer's strike happened. There were so many restaurants in Burbank that shut down because that writer's strike impacted shows that were being produced, which then impacted all of the cafes and the restaurants and the mom and pops that supplied food to those. So it was like people don't realize that all of this is connected. And that's why when people say we're all in this together, that's not just like a glib sentiment. That's not being cavalier. That's being very. This will affect all of us. It's just like the fires in Oregon right now. If you go outside, I'm trying to figure out we're going to do a traveler today. It's like we can't go outside, man. We're going to get weird indoors and like try to figure out some stuff because everything affects all of us. So it's not just something that you watch on the news or on your Twitter feed. It's like this affects you.
Unless you're in New Zealand, and then you're fine.
And then you're like, we don't have to deal with any of it.
Running around,
we got rid of the spiders and the snakes.
Yeah, there's no bloody smoke out here. Yeah, my dad going into hospital a bunch this year was like super nerve-wracking because of COVID. It was just every time he had to go to hospital, and he just got another surgery now on his hand, and has been told that he's going to have his finger removed from like the second knuckle up. And
better
that
than the
really
second knuckle down.
Me. No, like at first it was going to be his whole finger. And now it's from there up, and I'm like, they're gonna remove a part of my dad? Like it's just fucking strange. But every time that he goes to hospital, I'm like, please, people, just please look after yourselves and be aware of spreading sickness and consider what other people are going through who need to go to the hospital. Like,
for what it's worth, my grandmother, who died when I was pretty young, so I don't have that many memories with her, but she had, I think it was on her ring finger, it was missing from the knuckle up. Because when she was a kid, she was, like growing up in the South, typical, like find a creek, build a rope swing out over it. And the rope wrapped around her finger and literally pulled the end of it off. So she had her whole life she was missing. And my only memory of that, it was that she delighted in like, as a young kid being like, hey, do you know this trick? And then doing the thing. And then it's like, ha-ha! As a kid, you're like, oh, dear God, how did you do that?
Who are you, magic devil woman?
There needs to be just like...
That's actually kind of a common thing for especially people in Texas who do rodeo. That's not an uncommon thing to be missing just a part of your appendage because of the same thing. Your finger can get wrapped in the latigo, and if that horse yanks, then It'll just pull your finger out of this.
This is an alternate universe of your career had the whole acting
Could've done the rodeo.
thing not worked. Yeah, exactly.
I
I want to watch
remember
the
going to
heartwarming
the
drama about
rodeo.
Austin's family. Sorry, go on.
You know, okay, so here, funny.
This
And we're off.
transatlantic bloody delay is like going
Is
to
it
be the
bad
death
right
of me,
now?
genuinely.
Why?
Well, basically, whenever I start talking, I'm interrupting someone, which I think means it's like a 2-second delay or something.
Yeah, but
usually.
that's the brand, brother. That's like what this is all
like
about.
it.
It's like
I
it's
don't
all
care for it. I
that
don't
is
care
this
for it.
podcast is interruption.
I need
Welcome to
all of you
interruption.
to get on a plane,
Sorry, go on.
fly over here.
I would.
I'm sorry,
Make
go
my
on.
life
I'd
easier.
do it.
we
Don't tempt me.
Dude, I would too.
Yeah, well, in an alternate universe, we were hoping to do like whether it's a GDC or a DICE like actual face to face. Because ironically, the only time we've done this that way was
New
our
York.
Comic-Con panel that started
Right.
it all.
Right.
That's
well,
true.
related, I was going to start the show off by saying this today. Mike, you're okay with us talking about Carrie's broken foot that's staying in? Is that okay? Or do you want to cut it?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
Or why wouldn't you be cool with that?
Yeah,
Is there a
well, you
reason
try
why
to
you don't
cover
want
up,
to be
Mike.
talking about that?
By the way, in solidarity with Carrie, I
You broke your
totally,
foot.
I sprained my ankle last year so hard, and it was literally the dumbest thing. It was the same, like it was one of those where for as debilitating as it was, you wish there was some heroic adventure for what caused it, and it was just literally I was in Nashville. We were recording strings for Erica, and was walking down the street, and there was like a little 1-inch lift in the sidewalk where like a potted plant was on display in front of a restaurant or something, and just walking down and just landed on it and rolled.
Jeez.
and it rolled my ankle so hard that we were on our way to dinner. So walked to the restaurant, and then the whole time kept thinking like, I can feel this really swelling. And I just kept thinking, it's a sprained ankle. Like the pain will go away after an hour and then you're fine. And then I remember cut to me at midnight lying in bed, and I'm sweating and shaking. And it was like, I'm going to have to cut my fucking foot off. And finally they sent me like, like whatever, some generic like Advil or something from the front desk just to try to hold it at bay. But still to this day, if I step on it weird, it hurts. I basically
ankles-
permanently damaged my ankle.
Ankles
I
and
think.
knees,
Yeah.
if you don't actually deal with them, will screw you up for life. They're real rude.
Yeah,
But you know
it's
where we
true.
won't be going to sprain our ankles? Seattle, because PAX is online this year. Nailed it.
Very well done.
We have a
Beautiful.
PAX panel, everyone. It is on Monday, the 14th of September, from 11:15 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. Totally online. You can basically find which of Twitch's Twitch streams it is going to be on. I'll leave a link in the description for all the details for that. That's in Pacific time. But yeah, it'll basically be a live episode, and we're going to do our first Q&A. So very excited for that.
Oh,
Tune
no.
in. I think
That
we
seems
also
like a
have a
bad
cool
idea.
announcement.
It does.
So-
Mike and I both
don't
like.
care for that.
By the
Yeah.
way, I just want to point out: has anyone else seen me just kind of like blink in and out of
Yes.
existence? What
Yes.
the crap?
Yeah, you've been glitching. Yeah,
I was
you might
so,
be an AI that's taken over Troy's webcam.
Maybe.
Yep,
That's my
yep.
theory. Yeah.
I was super proud. I am broadcasting you. Broadcasting me
us.
to you. Prepositions are weird, guys. I don't believe in them. From my brand new spanking PC. I've joined the PC Master Race. Hi, coffee buddy. I'm
Nice.
doing something weird today. Are you doing a full lattes, Mikey?
Yeah.
What are you doing there, buddy? Are you doing?
I'm being sponsored this week. Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
That's
Is
not
that
true.
What is
PAX
that?
Pepsi?
What is
No,
that?
no youth-oriented brand would want my participation in fairness. You do look better though, Troy. Like the cat is the new camera new as well, or is that just 'cause
No,
going
it's
through a
just
Lighting's
you're not supposed to stream from a Mac. Like nobody tells you that. It's like don't do that. That's just.
I
dumb.
am. It's working fine.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you
but
do
you
also
have a
look
barely
blown out
Mac.
as fuck, Austin.
Yeah, you also look like
In
little
defense
shiny,
of
actually.
the Mac, that's the shitty camera.
you also look like Hugh Jackman in The Fountain, where it's just that image of you just. Oh, I got to that
since I
too quickly for the morning.
Since I haven't introduced everyone. Hi, I'm Alana. I'm in Games Media. I'm joined by Austin Wintry, who is a video game composer, Troy Baker,
Wait.
who is a video game actor, and Mike Biffle, who is a video game director. Welcome to our show. I don't know what we're going to talk about this week, because when I was even looking at stuff to talk about, I was so overwhelmed by choice that what I thought I would start off with here is I had you guys back in June apparently guess for me what you thought the price of the optical PlayStation 5 is. I'm
Roll
hoping
that
that
clip.
you don't remember, but I wanted to ask you again
idea.
just to see if they line up after us getting, this Series S and X price reveals, if you're still going to guess the same thing. So, Mike, how much do you think the optical PlayStation 5
I
is?
still think they're going to go high. So Xbox optical,
For optical?
is 500, right?
Yes.
It's the Xbox
199.
optical. Yeah,
Are
so
you doing
I
pounds or
think
dollars?
PlayStation will go like 600, 700. I'm going to say 650. I'm going to put it right in the
Rubles.
middle.
All right,
I think,
all
I think they're going to go pricey.
Rubles?
Yeah.
What are we doing? What currency?
Dollars.
Dollar it is.
We're doing a German
Dollarinos.
pre-Euro German.
Pre-Prussian francs?
Yeah,
We don't
exactly.
assume that Americans would know any other currencies but dollars, so we're
No.
catering to
I
you.
will have you know,
So-
though, that I keep
Yeah.
myself in military time and also in Celsius as opposed to Fahrenheit. I do.
love that.
Currently 22 degrees. And I do it as a mental exercise. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't get like weird brain as I get older. So I'm like learning French and I do myself in Celsius and people pick on me all the time. They're like, what is it in real temperatures? I'm like, do you want to know that it's 110? Do you want to know that? Or do you like hearing that's like, it's 43 degrees? That sounds a little bit better, doesn't it? That makes you want to go outside, doesn't it? 43 is
No,
fine.
no, 43 is too
110. Yeah, but you don't see you.
Nobody going outside at 43.
No one's going outside. It was almost 50. It was 50 degrees last Sunday. You know that? It was 50 degrees. It was 121 degrees in Woodland Hills.
That's
Anyway.
insane.
It's
Oh yeah,
been
it was like a state
brutal.
record.
State.
Not even for the
We
month.
did it.
It was literally
Congratulations,
It
everybody.
wasn't even just a state record in Death Valley, famously the Close Encounters
Valley of Death. That's where I
location.
walk.
Death Valley recorded. They said they need to validate it, but possibly the highest Earth surface temperature in recorded history.
God, isn't that just like Death Valley, always seeking validation?
Yeah, I know exactly.
being the most
Such a
It needs to
Definitely.
take a look at
Such a
itself
prima
and
donna.
realize its true self.
it's the Trump of valleys. That's like I am the most
Tremendous.
death. I am the most.
Tremendous.
Nobody
Yeah.
is more death than
You're
me.
welcome. We did it. We did the highest numbers, very high numbers.
But it's insane. And the crazy
Very good,
thing was
Troy.
that's you'd think that if it's 120 in Los Angeles, that Death Valley recording, an all-time temperature would mean it's like 150, but it was like 130. It was
Who's
one
out
of those
there
where
recording
Still
that
very
though?
hot.
What
I'm a
what poor schmuck is out there going?
I'm
David
guessing.
Blaine.
Philip, what's your job?
And
where he
for my
landed.
stunt today, I will endure this heat. No, I suspect, Troy, they
How
have
does he think?
technology for that. I have a feeling there might
why
be a
do you
gizmo.
think I had the balloons? Maybe it's David.
Turns
Blaine's
out the
fault.
balloons was him
That's what they
just
mean
walking.
when they say weather balloon. They mean a David Blaine. That's a weather
Yes.
balloon.
Yeah,
That's what that
yeah.
is.
You
Okay.
floats across the seas.
My
All right,
guess
Troy,
is
how
going
much
to
do you think
be-
PlayStation 5 is going to be.
So when the optical drive included is going to go high because I think they're definitely wanting to push everything to their online services. So I think they're going to go $299 for just the digital version only. And I think but Mike's right. They're going to go $499. With
I said
with
600, 650.
You did.
Did you
I
really?
definitely think that discless drive will be more expensive. But Troy, that means
discless.
sorry, cheaper. No. I do
Cheaper.
mean that. I am right. I think it'll be more expensive than $299. I think that their discless drive will probably be $399.
I think they're going to go. Oof. Have they ever launched and then quickly dropped? Like did a holiday thing where it's like $399, and then I'm trying to remember what South Park did because that's honestly my. Thank you, Steve, or thank you, Austin.
Just call me Steve.
I don't know where that came from.
But Steve,
Steve Austin. It's
Yeah.
a wrestling thing.
nice. You love wrestling.
I don't
Yeah, we
feel
know that.
well.
It's
He's
Steve,
a big
Call
wrestling
you
fan, yeah.
Steven?
It's
Thank you,
true that-
Steven.
Troy and I have bonded
I've been
extensively
calling him.
over WWE. That is one of the
Yeah, that's your
cornerstones
thing,
of our
right?
relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the we wear the opera
What?
binoculars, going. He is a fine wrestler.
Well, you always take the
Yes.
posters down before you start recording, right?
Ah, yes.
You've always got them up.
Ah,
Austin.
he's
You
going
have
to
the big
go for the
posters taken.
suplex, the double suplex. That's a wonderful move, isn't it, Austin? Yes. It's a wonderful night here for the. That's a great bit, by the way. We should write that.
Wrestling.
Austin,
Austin?
Steve, Stone Cold Steve Austin. What do you think?
How much is that PlayStation 5 going to be?
Austin's one of my best friends. His name is Steve.
Yeah, exactly. As testament, but you're like mousing over my Zoom window to make the name
What's his
show
name?
up. Go.
Oh
"Ah,
shit! Speaking of, I need to change
Guy,
my
that guy,
name.
the thing with the.
Who's that guy who's always moving?
He did
My
flower. I remember.
I think I said 500 before. I honestly don't remember, but that was my instinct today, and it still feels pretty right. It still feels like that's a pretty good number. I think Mike, you know, I have a feeling is that's probably going to be it. It's going to skew on the higher, but I feel like almost optimistically 500 is a pretty palatable number, I think, especially given that it's not a given that it would need to have the drive. So because they obviously, I think Xbox is exerting a downward price pressure on them, and so
do you think that works though? I do not believe that at these companies, like I don't believe that Sony's going to be like, well, let's cut $100. Like I just
It happened last time. Remember that?
It's not, well, but it's not.
But
it's
did
not
it
a matter,
though, or was it just announced that way?
It's
No,
not a
it
matter
was-
of them
Go ahead,
saying
Austin.
that though. They don't just say like let's just cut, like it would be a let's review our manufacturing process. Let's review
Right.
like are there ways to bring this price down because our competitor is going to kill us on that front. Like
So I think the opposite of what you're saying is true. Like that's my, and I'm probably gonna be proven wrong by the time this video goes up, right? But
Can't
like,
wait.
I
By
actually
what I'm
think,
saying, or-
I actually
or-
think the play for PlayStation is to actually go up. I think that's where they're thinking
to
will
be
probably
like the
take them.
premium brand.
It's value.
That's the place, that's the field that's wide open right now. Because if you look at it, you've got Switch, which is doing its own thing over here and is having a great time, and lots of people love it.
Mm-hmm.
Xbox is definitely positioning itself as like not the value console, but like the console that can offer a lot of value, and specifically with those kind of subscription models, is a really interesting, different business model for a
I
console.
like the semantics of that. It's not the value console, but it is the console that can offer a lot of value.
But that's a difference, right? I
what
don't know
you're
if the
saying.
same connotation's
Yeah.
true in
No, I get it.
America.
It's
Like
like when you
value in
say
the UK means kind
budget-
of cheap.
the budget,
I definitely don't
yeah.
think it's saying it's cheap, but I think
The
they are
dollar
definitely going
store.
for. They're going for the parent who wants to like, I'm going to pay X a month in subscription, and my kid is going to have lots of rolling content. That's the play they're making. To me, PlayStation, it's time to become the iPhone. It's time to become like the luxury. This isn't just a games console. This is a PlayStation. You know, and I think that's the angle purely from marketing point of view. That seems like. If I was in that room, I would probably be the one saying maybe we need to say this is a luxury device and push in that direction. And I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I don't know how consumers would react to that, but it feels like a space because they're differentiating a lot more. This is not a console war. I think Alana, am I stealing this from a video from you? I feel like I saw you make this point. It's not really a direct competition. They're just very different now. All the consoles in terms
My
of the
take
propositions they're doing.
is you may have, yeah, because I feel like I say
I
it
think
a
I've
lot.
stolen this from you because I think it's true.
It keeps happening though. Let me just air agree.
In the comments, people credit me
will
with
be
like most
Mike
of what
made
you
a really
say.
good
It's
point.
great.
And I'll be like, Mike
Yeah.
he just backed up the point that I made. Why did
I think there might be some kind of institutional problem in the world that favors
No,
that. I don't know
my
what it
stance
is.
is in this next generation of console wars. It's virtually impossible to quantify because they're fighting different fights. If we've previously
Exactly.
gone on who has sold the most hardware, I don't think you can even qualify the success of which company is winning. I hate all of this, but you can't even really do that anymore because PlayStation is trying to sell PlayStations and Xbox is trying to sell subscriptions. So they are just doing completely different things at this point.
Yeah, Mike, that's a fascinating. I hadn't thought about that.
Sorry,
as a-
Troy, I'm distracted by your brilliant joke. I apologize.
Yeah,
It kind
it's very good.
It's undercutting your point. It's a
Austin,
good
have you
joke.
noticed the joke yet?
Listen, guys, I want to make a very serious comment. Don't look at my name. My name's not important. Names are not important. Names are just an
missed it.
antiquated system.
It's very
They're a
good.
So, look,
philosophical
I
construct.
thought
right?
you were.
It's that
I thought
stage of the podcast.
I thought you were referring. I thought you were saying the joke was that he instantly says, "No, Mike, I agree." After Alana finishes articulating this point,
I
was
think
like, "Damn,
that
this is chess right here."
you gotta get your Zoom game up, guys.
Who showed Troy where that button was? This is bad.
So-
This is just for the podcast.
Honestly, it's people within our little community. We do our little things on Saturday and Sunday. We do our movie screen on Saturday and our prompt on Sunday. And people just their name game is high. And I'm like, I got to step it up. I feel like we've gone analog with instead of like TikTok and digital content. It's now like, what can I do with like this naming system? Anyway,
Yep.
I didn't think about. Because what I was thinking was like, again, kind of going back to the fact that all of these things are connected, right? Just in the same way that the way that you now go to urgent care or whatever is affected because of COVID, even though you may not be directly impacted by COVID. I feel like this console generation launch it already has been affected by COVID by the titles that have been pushed, the movies that have been pushed. But the fact of going, all right, mom and dad, or all right, people that are upwardly mobile and have the money to spend on this, We understand that you've probably been impacted by this economically because it's been global. It's not just like a certain group of people, so we can kind of just mitigate and disenfranchise those people. But globally, people have been impacted from an economic standpoint. So instead of gouging you and making this be more expensive, we want to drive the cost down and make this more palatable and a more affordable expenditure. But I hadn't thought about the angle of like, and the way that we're going to do that is by creating this whole new system, just like you've been, accustomed to Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and Disney Plus and everything else. Now you're not going to pay $60 for a game. Now you only have to pay $15 a month. That's a lot better, isn't it? Even though most people typically, what's the standard? It's like most people buy 4 games a year or 5 games a year, something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So that hits that mark, right? So 4 months of those people is $60, but you're actually getting 3 times that amount for people who are subscribers because their attrition is going to be super low. I have not played my Xbox in 2 years, but I still have my Gold Pass.
We just lost half our subscribers.
The fanboys. There's no fanboys for Xbox. Comments. You're welcome, guys. I'm just stirring that pot.
I feel like this show is eating itself now. Like 4
Yeah,
references to
baby.
like the
We've
comments
arrived
on
29
previous
episodes later.
Get a
But you know what I
vaccine
mean?
for that
I love
coronavirus so we can go back to monthly. It's not.
So
None of it's good.
instead of saying like it's a luxury thing, I think that being able to go is like we are saving you money. It just there's a little bit more of an upfront cost, but it will be worth it in the long run. And I mean, clearly people have been able to do that by saying like Apple TV is like, yeah, you have to spend a little bit up front, but you'll be able to have access to all of this content. So I think that's a wise thing. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe they're not going to go $2.99. Maybe they will go higher because they'll be like, but on the I don't know, man. I still think we're one generation away from that because we're not full subscription yet. We're still box title,
Real close.
hard cost.
The
we are
reason they
close.
say I
Xbox
don't
seem
think
to
they'll
want
go-
to take us there.
Yeah.
They're even doing it with the hardware, right? Like they literally, you don't need to
access.
buy an Xbox. You can just subscribe to an Xbox, right?
And
That's
honestly, the
that's
model of
exciting.
the hard disk is such an antiquated thing. It's like we haven't been doing software that way for a decade. You know what I mean? When was the last time you had to go and buy a box set of Office or Pro
True.
Tools
True.
or anything?
I
What did
still
do that for?
remember
Never
the
done that
excitement when I went to Microsoft HQ once, and I went in the Microsoft shop. I'm a very cool guy.
Very
Yeah, we
cool.
And they have
Yeah.
like their staff
So
shop
hot.
with the staff discount. You could get Office for like 50% off Troy. It was pretty magical. It was pretty
Scandalous.
amazing.
He
He
was
was
Hey.
walking out with the swag
Kind of a
bag.
big deal. I just bought 2 copies. Just
The
for
Windows,
hell. Just to
the
live,
Windows
just to
ME
feel it.
edition.
You get to keep that pen,
No,
by
it
the
is.
way.
It is a good point.
Ooh.
So the reason that I also for the record I said 450. Mike, you've gone more expensive. You've gone up from 550 to 650. Austin and Troy, you stayed the same. I think I said 450 to make this interesting, but I feel like it probably is going to be 599. Is what I
Ooh.
actually think. And then I think the
Yeah.
discless version will be maybe $399, even maybe $499, because the Xbox Series S, the $299 console, has more taken out of it than just that disk drive. It won't run at 4K, so it is a next gen box,
Wow.
but it is also lower resolution.
Ooh.
That's how they made it so cheap, and I don't think PlayStation is going to do that. Like, they are just going to remove that disk drive, and then everything else will be the same. So
It'd be very
I-
interesting to see how much that ends up mattering to players. Like if people buy in droves a thing that can't support 4K, it'll be an interesting
Also
testament
to-
to that not mattering to people as much as we think it does.
But
Yeah.
Mike, to devs, would that piss you off? You're like, we did all of this work to make sure that our game will run in 4K at 60p or 60 frames. Is that going to be like, and we didn't even have to do it, or do you always have to dev for the? Do you always dev for the best, or do you dev for the
Well,
lowest?
wait. Can I just point out? There's two
Do it.
different
Yes,
questions
Steve.
in there. There's two different.
Steve, please.
We'll be with you. In a
Hi,
moment.
nice to meet you all. There are. You're asking basically, do we do it because we have to? But also, would it be a massive bummer to do that knowing that they won't see the
Yeah,
results of that? I feel like that's two different things I'd like to hear the answer to.
please. Steve's right. Kevin?
Steve out.
Steve's all right. Steve
Thank
out.
you, Steve.
I mean, honestly, most developers would just love a consistent platform we could ship to, and we didn't have to worry
Sure.
about the differences. Like every dev basically wants everyone to own, a 16:9 monitor at this resolution with this hardware plugged into it, because essentially everything is a variation. And like I have to with PC versions of games, like I need to support super wide. I remember when we were finishing up John Wick, and we, obviously a bigger project. It had a massive QA process, and we were getting from the QA team bugs where this game, the text didn't render well at 640 by 480 4:3 resolution. And there was this moment in the team of does anyone realistically still play a PC game at 480p? And ultimately we decided, hey, probably someone does. We'll do what we can to kind of help them and support them. But this is game development's frustrating as hell from this level. Even the fact that on modern console games, you sometimes have that screen where you have to choose where the edges of your screen are. And by the way, this setup is perfect for this mine.
Isn't that great?
The fact that still is a thing, because what that means is when you're designing UI, you're basically kind of think of it like left aligning or right aligning text in a word processor. You're having to do that at scale to account for all these multitudes of different situations. Forget about it if you're on a mobile phone and you don't know what the resolution of that screen is, what the ratio of that screen is. You have to really cater for it. So that's part of the artistry of video game UIs that no one really knows about, is making everything scale and work at every different resolution. There's an art to it, and it's really kind of interesting to work on, and I do a lot of that work on our projects because it is interesting, but it is kind of thankless. No one cares as long as it looks good on their monitor. It's not like people are downloading your game and playing it on 10 different monitors to see all of the brilliant ways you've made it work across the board.
Well, that's the same with accessibility options too. It's having to consider various disabilities, people who are hard of hearing, people who are blind, how to let every single person play a video game and consider all of those things is, you're right, a massive thankless task that requires so much work. But I mean, I don't imagine that making something work for 4K and 1080 is difficult. But again, I don't know anything.
It's not difficult. It's just kind of, it can be tricky in terms of just things like aliasing on fonts. The way fonts are smoothed on the desktop. I know you know this, Alana, but the smoothing and all of that stuff. The way you would approach that on 1080p versus a 4K, and the expectation from players, of course, is that if they've got a 4K console, they want all the images in the UI to be 4K and smooth and clean. I remember I saw a review of the Tony Hawk's remaster recently that commended it's a 4K UI. And it's this kind of, this stuff does matter to the player. So yeah, you have to just cater to that upper end. So basically what you're always trying to do in game development, especially console game development, is you're targeting the highest res, but you're trying not to leave anyone behind, because people are going to have the bad setups. The NAF TV. There are still people playing modern games on 4:3. Actually, I don't know.
Really?
When was 4:3 deprecated? I feel like PS4 actually supports 4:3.
I mean, I did for ages because I played on a projector that was 4:3.
Really?
Yeah, so you're still catering to all of this stuff. It's come up a few times with our games that we've had to. I can't remember the situation with PS4. I can't remember, but
it has to be such a small amount. Can you not just mitigate that and go, this game will not run 4:3? Right?
You've been on the internet, Troy, right? You've encountered the internet. Yeah. Then you can't go to the audience and go, you guys can't play the game. You can't.
It reminds me of the opposite.
But does that? My guess is, do those sentiments equate to a loss of sales? You may get vitriol on Reddit. But will that impact your team?
Theoretically, it would be a loss of sales from
right?
the contingent of people that literally can't play the game, right?
Yeah, but if that's such a small percentage,
it's really hard to ever draw a line between online reaction and sales. But
true. Last of Us Part 2.
We try not to upset people, right?
You are giving me flashbacks though to the when Crysis came out, and the big story around it was that it basically can't run on any current PC at its full specs. It was we've made a game for the future. You need the HAL 9000 to run this thing. And it was interesting how that was it's kind of leaning the other direction of, Well,
that's PC versus console, right? So with PC, the player, there's a certain amount of a maker mentality with PC gamers that they want to poke around, they want to test things, they want to play with the settings. That's part of the fun of the hobby for them. Whereas console players just do not want any of that, or at least, I guess more importantly, from my perspective, the console companies don't think their players want that stuff. So they'll often. So you have these.
I don't
That's
wanna-
part of the
console
point of a
manufacturers that you have
console.
to kind of-
Right. I don't want to crack
Yeah.
my console open. I don't want to have to add a peripheral to it if I don't have to. But my PC, I'm like, I feel like I want to get it. It's like the difference
Yeah,
between
you want
owning like a
fiddle, right? You
Ferrari
wanna-
Yeah.
and
You
like
run
a
the
69
benchmarks,
Camaro.
get like an extra 0.1 of a frame per second, and all this stuff.
It's not
I've
even
had-
necessarily
I want
that. It's just
38. I just want to ray trace, bro.
Have
Don't
you
harsh
seen?
me.
Speaking of Crysis, have you seen that the
Yes.
the Crysis remaster on console is
Out
going
on
to
the
have ray
18th.
tracing? Yeah, on the I
Well,
think the PS. I
Here's
think
the thing with that, Mike, because I
yeah.
think that's an interesting
on.
one too.
That's
Is
baffling to me. that that's
how
possible.
is that Crisis? How does Crisis
Crisis
Remaster look
averted?
so bad? It's going to be my question. They
How does
literally
it
had
look
to
so
delay it. Yeah, like it almost looked worse than the original Crisis. And I know that like if you look at the history of Crytek, like that whole thing is a mess. But that game was supposed to come out, I believe, in June or July, and they pushed it because the reception of the trailer was so bad that they were like,
Really?
everyone was like, I prefer to just play Crisis 1. That it's now coming out.
I missed all of that. What were the
yeah.
complaints about the aesthetics of it? Just looked.
It
looked
doesn't.
Worse,
It
or
just, yeah,
was
it just
more-
looks atrocious. It's like muddy. The lighting's really poor. Everything looks really flat. The textures are so obviously repeated. It just.
Oh, that's fascinating.
It's like I just don't understand.
So
how this
there's a
is
few. I'm completely unaware of that entire conversation, but like speaking as if I know what I'm talking about. Like there's definitely. Well, one of the things that really trips
pull
up
it
a
off
lot
with
of
the
these
accent.
demos. That's right. Yeah, this accent has gotten me further in the industry than any of the skills I actually
Everyone's
possess.
You know what? I
But,
didn't
like,
believe
the-
your pitch, but your accent.
Your
You sold
English accent really does convince me of this. It's funny. But like first of all, with Halo, what was interesting with the Halo reaction recently, because there was some negative reaction in similar vein on that one. That one seems to have been that they just chose a poor time of day from a lighting perspective in that demo. To some extent, there were certain issues where you know the stuff that players expect to look good. You know, the stuff, the signifiers to players of this is a really great rendering system, are not served by like what they showed, which was like an overcast day in a boring weather cycle. So everything looked a bit flat. So I wonder if that was maybe with Crisis, if it's got some kind of environmental kind of time of day stuff. Maybe that was unfortunate. The other thing that we've contended with and is fascinating, and I'm sure there are side-by-side comparisons that prove what I'm about to say completely wrong in the case of Crysis, but it's a really interesting phenomenon, is your memory of games makes them look so much better than they actually did all the time. And it's always really fun to contend with. We had it with
That is
Volume
certainly
we
true.
released, which was a stealth game. And it kind of looks a bit, basically it was a bit Metal Gear Solid VR missions. Like we knew what we were making, it was fine. And we got in reviews, people were crediting us with copying features from the original Metal Gear Solid VR missions that were not in Metal Gear Solid VR missions. They were kind of quality of life stuff we'd done in terms of vision cones from the enemies and stuff. And they were literally describing these features they remembered from Metal Gear VR missions that were not in it. But you remember games as having mechanics and aesthetic qualities that they simply didn't.
It's like the
Because
Mandela
your
effect.
brain fills in the gaps.
Huh.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think sometimes with remasters, it's a really interesting thing where you're not actually competing with the original game. You're competing with how people remember that game that they played when they were a kid and were excited by and all of this stuff. Now, I'm sure in this case, there are probably comparison videos that prove everything I'm saying is not true, but like it's a more generalized kind of interesting thing.
No, but that-
you spot.
As a study of the human brain, that is unquestionably true because we don't our brains are not actually hard drives. Like we don't just dock like visuals and like little QuickTime videos basically in our head. We basically leave behind the sort of formula needed to reconstruct an event, and it's going to be heavily subjectively influenced by not just what was going on at the time, our emotional state, all that kind of thing, but our current emotional state, and will recolor everything, which is why it's baffling. I come across this all the time just as part of my general nerdiness for things like epistemology, where the fact that the criminal justice system, at least in the US, puts such a huge primacy on eyewitness testimony when it is by far the most unreliable form of testimony that
they've
could
proven
possibly
that,
exist.
too.
Over
proven
and
that
over
it's
and
false.
over. I mean, how many times, you have things like I'm blanking on the name of it. It might be the Innocence Project, but there's a handful of criminal justice nonprofits that basically are going back, and there are cases where people have been in jail for 10, 20, 30 years, basically because somebody pointed at them and said, "You did it." And they're able to, and this part blows my mind, they're somehow able to use DNA testing still to this day. I've never understood how that's possible, but there will be like some fragment of evidence somewhere that they'll be able to do DNA testing and exonerate this person all this time later, despite someone. And the thing is, I don't think in most cases that people have this malicious intent to like lie and point the finger at somebody. No. They just don't get it right. And we just assume, I mean, here's a personal example of one of my favorites of these. 2016, 17, something like
counting.
that.
Troy fucking hell. I just keep catching the name change.
I'm listening.
I'm
listening.
It's like he's got his own little show over in the corner.
I know. I was gonna say we're really sticking it to those Spotify folks today.
2007.
So I was in New York and I saw Hamilton on Broadway, and I had been hearing about it. You know, this was obviously, you know, it was already thoroughly a known entity at that point, but it was still relatively early in its takeover of the world. And I had a friend who had been advocating for it, but I had never listened to one note of music. I had intentionally said, you know, I knew I'm going to be in New York. I'll see it live as a kind of virginal experience without walking in having listened to the album a million times like a lot of other people. And so I remember the Act 1 closer is this big showstopper called Nonstop, and I see it, and the sort of recurring line of the song is Eliza asking, "Why are you always writing like you're running out of time?" And as someone, I was at the tail end of a pretty fucked up period of my life, and obviously, you know, I had talked here before about my father, and that was still relatively recent, and there were a lot of things that were at play in me emotionally. And so I see this show and I'm like crying and just I'm blown away and think it's just the most amazing feat of creativity and of songwriting and narrative in one incredible alchemy together, and just thought this is utterly mind-blowing. I can't believe that one person essentially just hatched this so single-handedly. And so I was telling people for weeks after, I said, there's this amazing song halfway through that has this most beautiful, succinct study of our mortality, where she says, "Why do you always write like you're running out of time?" And he says, "Because I am." And I was this amazing, just it cuts straight to it in so few words. And I'm telling everyone I know about how brilliant this song is. And then I finally go to listen to the album, and he never says that. I had completely made it up and projected, and I could hear it with certainty. I could hear it musically. I could hear it sung.
Wow.
And then I realized that she says, "Why do you always write like you're running out of time?" And then the song just moves on. And
Wow.
I literally, I had told everyone I know about those lyrics.
Told me.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's one of those, like, if I had,
Oh shit! The bookshelf returns.
Just gonna go into the lyrics.
I mean, I certainly had that with Rare Replay. Like, in my head, Banjo-Kazooie looks exactly like it looks in Rare Replay, but then you see actual footage of Banjo-Kazooie, and I'm like, "Go! What has happened here? Like, it's terrible."
It's like GoldenEye 64 when you see the close-ups of the faces.
Yeah.
In my memory, it like is Sean Bean.
Yeah.
And then you look and it's just this horrible monster.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know, my God.
Yeah, it's super interesting how that stuff happens. How you basically just can't trust human memory whatsoever. And individual people do things differently too. Like, some people will remember based on what emotion they were feeling at the time. Other people will remember based on what they cataloged at the time. So you can also have people who remember based primarily on senses. Like, I think all of that stuff's really interesting. And I learned a bunch about it because I probably mentioned this before, but because of the way that we remember VR. So humans, because your brain subconsciously thinks that what's happening in VR is real, you will remember a VR location or experience to the same extent that you would remember it if it had actually happened to you or if it was in the real world. Where if you're playing a video game, you won't. So, like, sitting down playing one in your living room. So if I'm going to go through the house in Resident Evil 7 and I'm playing it on my TV in my living room, I'm not going to remember it half as well as I would if I were doing it in VR, because, again, my brain is like, I need to remember this because this is a real location I'm at, even though it's not. And I just think the fact that we're tricking our brains into thinking things are real, which is the same reason VR motion sickness occurs, is because your body is like, why am I not moving in the way that the images are moving? Like, the world is moving, but I'm not. I
must have been poisoned.
It's so cool.
I'll never forget.
What?
I was
hold on. What is that? What that is?
Yeah.
It's your body when your body's getting contrasting information, it believes that it must have been poisoned and therefore tries to vomit in order to expel the poison. That's where motion sickness comes from as well.
Yep.
I've never
Your
seen
body
someone
doesn't
so
understand the
excited
idea
about
of vehicles that move fast. Have you never heard that before?
What?
Okay. And having worked on a couple of VR games,
I'm like
you
a
have to be
9-year-old
very
right
aware
now.
of
This
this.
is blowing my
absolutely
mind.
Did look like a kid. That was very cute, Troy.
That's beautiful. It's charming. It's lovely.
I mean, isn't that it makes sense? It's the same reason why you get motion sick on a boat, because you're basically, your brain is trying to reconcile why the world, your sense of like the downward pull of gravity is at odds with where you
It
think
thinks
the
you ate
horizon
some
is.
bad berries or something. Yeah.
I just thought that was simply as like, look, the fluid that's in your cochlea or whatever in your inner ear, when it shifts that way, it creates just this chemical reaction. I didn't know that there was actually some form of like evolutionary programmed response. Poison.
Again, why I think VR is so cool. It's we have provably tricked our brains. And I can't think of another instance of something doing that, where we are blatantly tricking our senses into thinking we're doing something that we're not. And it's just your subconscious just has absolutely no idea, even if you consciously know what's happening, and you can't override it. The fact that I can't be like, no, stupid brain, it's VR, stop making me vomit when I play Minecraft, is just fascinating. Like, we're just manipulating ourselves for entertainment. I just think it's wild.
You could argue that's all entertainment is manipulation.
That's true. That's true.
I've always struggled with VR because I find that I am really susceptible to that motion sickness. And I remember once when we were working on Deformers, I was down at Ready at Dawn, and they showed me like a very early prototype of Lone Echo. And it was basically a tech demo still at this point. I mean, this was years ago. And they said, all right, put on the Oculus. And they're like, I've got the little handles, and I'm seeing, they're like, okay, push off against this wall and just see how naturally you can kind of swivel around and grab at floating in zero gravity, grab the opposite wall, and then like climb along a ladder and just move in complete and total 360-degree zero gravity. And then I remember, I think it was Rue or Dana who was walking me through it, where I go to the like ladder, and they say, now look over your shoulder, and I look, and there's like a little portal. I mean, I'm in like a big spherical kind of, like the Danger Room in X-Men, like in this big chamber that's just kind of like a sphere, and or Cerebro rather. And I'm holding this ladder, and they say, now look over your shoulder, and there's a little portal. Can you aim well enough to just push off and drift like through the portal to the exterior of the ship? And this whole time you've been in like a pretty tight, narrow space. And so I push, and I manage to hit the target, and I come out, and I just go out into open space, and I'm over Saturn, and I instantly started sweating.
Yeah. And
like, but it was like a religious experience. It was one of those where it was the first time I thought VR is a thing. This is not a gimmick. Like, I genuinely felt like a lifelong ambition to drift amongst the stars was realized as realistically as I was ever gonna. And the funny thing is, this was a tech demo. If I went back and looked at like playback capture of what I was looking at, it was probably nothing compared to where it's at now, because even Ready at Dawn in particular are so stickler for incredible visuals. But I was so blown away at how just real it felt, and visceral. It was unbelievable experience.
And also for that as well, the first time that I played it, I was
and my body was convinced it was real. That's the whole
Yeah.
point of why I brought it up. It's like that the sweat made me feel like I'm in a beautiful place, but I'm not necessarily 100% safe right now because I am floating in space right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just one of those. Anyway, go ahead, Troy.
I had done some VR before, and the same thing. I was like, typically it's like sit down and like you're in a mech or whatever, and you have to turn around, and that's where I would be like, whew, that would have an adverse response or adverse reaction to me. But the thing with Lone Echo is they handed me a controller, and so I was like using a controller, and then they said they haven't released these yet, but here are some actual hand controls that they're going to have, and they actually gave me what everybody's has for Oculus now and for everything.
Yeah, it was the
And
same thing where your fingers move, right?
Yeah, but for this before it was like,
I can't remember what that's called.
X does this, Y does this, and I was like, okay, and so I'm kind of AB does this. I was like, got it. So I'm moving, and I was very like playing like a game. The second they put those in my hands, I immediately started just like it instantly how I had like a haptic, tangible feel, and it was the first game. I was like, how long was I in there? Like 5 minutes or like 25 minutes?
The tape ran for 18 hours, Troy.
It came out and the
for 18
developers
hours.
all had beards.
Yeah, it's like,
No, it actually came out and
Who
just
are you?
there was like smoking craters and no one had been around for ages.
guys,
and
this
It's a
game's
Bill and Ted moment,
guys,
yeah.
guys.
Exactly.
What's
It's
Charlton Heston doing here, and why do you look like a monkey?
It's the opening
we're
of
gonna be
28
all
days later.
It was
IGN
it was
really
such a cool
complicated.
experience. That to me, but the reason why it works is because it's interesting that Austin had that experience, because for me it was the traversal is the biggest thing to tackle with VR, because that's what makes us feel like my legs aren't moving, but I see that I'm. So if you like play like Honor and Blood or whatever it is, or Blood and Honor,
Blood and Truth?
Blood and Truth, thank you. You know, you do the point and warp and stuff. It's a
The same
bigger
thing that
buy-in.
Alex did, right?
Huh?
Correct.
Yeah, the
Isn't
same
that
thing that
that
Half-Life did.
Yeah.
But it's the difference between like I'm moving through the world, and of course I don't feel myself moving because I'm in 0G. It was just the greatest, like, oh, this is how we tackle traversal. And this is a great commercial for Lone Echo.
And who's starring in that game, I wonder?
Oh, I don't know.
Could be anyone.
Her
No,
name
North, I think.
is. She's actually really quite good. I have about 5 minutes because I gotta go to Daddy Duty Day
Yeah.
today. I gotta
that's
go
all
full Daddy
good.
Duty.
We did.
Which sounds, I never thought that I would say that as a man in my 40s, to be like, and I could just see Alana like trying to figure out, what are we going to call this?
I do think that all the time, every episode, and then I'm on a live stream and I title it because I'm working while titling it, and I'm like, that was why did I do any of that? And it's just a whole mess. But I'll figure it out. I would just like you guys to know that Liverpool are currently 3-2. Up to Leeds, just in case you were wondering.
I don't want to get
Very
into
exciting
politics.
stuff for me.
We.
Uh,
And which
there-
team
there-
are you supporting, Alana, out of interest, without any information? I have no
I
idea.
don't worry about it.
There is a lot that I'm maybe on at our PAX live show that we can get into, because there's a lot that's been going on. I'm so curious to hear your respective takes on.
I did watch the Dune trailer for what it's worth.
I do
Do you want
want
to close out talking about that, Austin? Sorry, Steve.
Sorry. It's
Steven.
Steve. With
Steven.
a PH, by the way, not a V.
Steve.
Steve. No one calls me
Stephen.
Steve.
If you're gonna, it's Stefan actually.
Stefan. God, he's evolved.
Yeah, in real time. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of that director, Denis Villeneuve. That guy has proven himself to be quite the.
What has he done?
Prior to this was Blade Runner 2049 or whatever, 90210.
Yes.
And then before that was Arrival and Sicario and Prisoners.
I love Arrival. What a film.
And
Jacksepticeye's favorite movie.
There you go.
the ambition of that guy as a filmmaker, and just the production design, like just the unbelievable. The first time I saw a trailer for Arrival, where you just see those wide shots of the ships just floating, and it's like a painting. I mean, but obviously it's not the director alone. It's working with incredible cinematographers and art directors and people like that, and production designers. But still, as the vision driving it, because you can really see the consistency. It's like Ridley Scott also, where it's just. You can make the worst film, but it looks amazing. But this one, I have, it makes me want to go reread Dune. I haven't read it again. I haven't read it since I was a kid. But it really looks like, and seeing all my diehard, Dune obsessed, nerd friends be like, holy shit, finally.
I feel like
finally
Dune,
got what it deserved.
Yeah, I feel like Dune is the cinematic equivalent to Rush. Like, if you're really into Rush, you're probably going to like Dune. I never...
There's the title of today's episode.
I've never read the book. I know that the story behind the story of making Dune and how it was originally what was the person that actually created it, but then actually
Frank Herbert,
perfect.
the author. You mean?
Yeah. And like he thought he was going to do the movie, and then no, that didn't happen. And so like
Jodorowsky as well. Was it not? I'm butchering that name. Jodorowsky, or there's a movie about the making of the Dune movie that never got made.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then I was like, oh, but when I saw Star Trek, I was like, that's the guy from Dune. Like that's why do they all have blue eyes? This is how maybe perhaps shallow I am. I was like, another reboot. Do we need to? And I was like, okay, here's the point in the trailer. Was like, this could have been a trailer for anything. Is the same kind of beats. And then they got me with the Pink Floyd. They got me with the Pink Floyd, man. That is one of the best opus, like that specifically off Dark Side of the Moon. Every time gives me chills. It is just such a wonderfully orchestrated, arranged, written, impactful, especially listening in context of the entire record. And somehow they managed to imbue that trailer with all of that ethos from that song. And what an interesting it's the second time that a trailer has surprised me with the use of a song of going, that's not a misappropriation. Like what you did.
And you know what never fails to amaze me is that I see people always, still to this day, I thought that the kind of general media literacy had reached a point where people understood that marketing teams are the ones making those decisions. And like maybe for a director like that, he probably is involved, and there's obviously kind of history there with Pink Floyd, so it's like it makes sense. But
is there?
Isn't there a connection?
Weren't they involved in the movie I was talking about? The one that never got made? Was that them? Or
is that what it was?
Or were they the David Lynch one?
No, because the David Lynch was very famously, wasn't that Tangerine Dream?
Yes.
It was Queen. I think it was Queen with the one I'm talking about.
That sounds right.
I need to watch that documentary.
Okay, yeah. I might be having my wires crossed, but either way,
Okay.
the point, notwithstanding that, marketing departments are who make these trailers, like third party groups, and on a film like this, the director is certainly going to be involved, I would think.
Often,
but there's no guarantee
aggressively
of that.
third party. Like Rooster Teeth has made video game trailers.
Yeah,
For completely,
I don't doubt
like
that.
nothing to do with anything we've ever worked on. Like Rooster Teeth has cut video game trailers as like a contract studio. Like it's so separate.
That's what Blur did.
John Wick's trailers were the games trailers were done by the same house that does the movies, and those they're doing all the Avengers trailers and everything. So you're kind of visiting like those offices. There are literally like amazing boutique studios in Hollywood that are just trailer houses.
Trailer Park is one of them.
Great.
It is an art form. It's like we have, and they used to only be like a finite amount of space, and now they're like, well, they're 4 or 5 minutes, 7 minutes long for these epic trailers for these huge movies. So it's like, how do we to direct a trailer in the same way that if you actually look at like a Previously On is a very unique skill set to be able to communicate a lot of information to the viewer and onboard them very quickly. So that's why some of the best directors came from commercials, because how do you have 30 seconds to tell a story, and every second, every frame. Music videos the same way. But to me, a music video is different because a music video is all about matching visuals to an established rhythm, because the music videos are actually a lot easier because your cuts are predetermined for you, right? The rhythm of your shots, of your editing is laid out because you want to make sure that you're doing everything with the 1 and the 3 of the kick, or the 2 and the 4 of the snare, or when the guitars come in, that's going to change your shot. But actually being able to go in a commercial, it's like, I need to tell a story in 30 seconds, and every second I have a second to tell this story and a second to tell this story, so that 30 shots is all I have. It's brilliant, dude, to be able to convey that.
Editing is I've been editing professionally, and I'm certainly not trailer levels of skilled, but I've been editing professionally for it's probably 6 years now. Did a lot of editing at IGN, and video editing is a really interesting
art
puzzle.
form.
Yeah, very, very unique to everything else that I do, in a way that if it's good, same as a lot of things we've discussed here, nobody notices. So if something is well edited, no one has any idea.
There's
but,
some
like,
great articles. No, sorry, Alana, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, even editing a gameplay from an hour down to 10 minutes, which is something I do frequently, is a math of how do I make sure the narrative of what is happening in this is consistent? How do I minimize crosstalk if other people are talking, but make sure that their points are still getting across? What do you cut to make sure that funny things are funny? Like, often it's just a matter of, if you even trim 1 second after a joke earlier than you think you should, it's funnier. Like, there's just so many pieces moving of like, okay, well, I need to keep that cutscene in because that sets up this next bit that happens, but we don't want too much cutscene because then that's too much of this content and we're talking over it. Like, it's really like this ongoing constant puzzle. I really enjoy it.
Editing.
But-
There's a Twitter I recently discovered that's called like perfectly cut screams or something like that. That is one of the funniest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. Where it's literally like, you know, a guy in his car with a cup of coffee, and then he drops it, and it starts again, and it goes, "Rah!" And then it just cuts, and it's just like every time it's fucking hilarious. And there's a million of them, and I just to me, editing
If you
is
want,
superpower.
Ben Schwartz does a fun, and then on this I'm gonna have to go. But Ben Schwartz does this great thing. He had the guy who can't come in onto a song at the right time, and it's wonderfully cut, and it's just a like almost like a TikTok or Instagram, whatever. I think his handle is Rejected Jokes, but if you look, it's just him playing along with somebody with an acoustic, and he's trying to like come in on like songs that everybody knows, and he just can't come in on the right. And his friends are going, "No, just wait, no." And like he does one with John Mayer, and John Mayer's hilarious, but he's doing it in such earnest, and everybody knows that guy that's just really going for it, and you couldn't be worse.
What, just on Ben Schwartz's Twitter somewhere?
Yeah, it's also as an Instagram. Ben Schwartz is really, really talented, and he's a nice guy. At least everything that I've seen, I could be wrong. The guy could be just a deplorable human being, but everything that I've seen is
He seems
nobody
to be a
knows.
good dude.
He does a good
Sonic
job
the
messaging.
Hedgehog.
Nice guy.
yeah, his marketing is great. Have fun, titling this, Alana. Maybe it's the Ben Schwartz episode. That's what it is.
Yeah,
it's
from all
like,
that Ben
look,
Schwartz content
we're
we
saving all of our good stuff for next week.
Yeah, we will.
I like the idea of the time code being literally the last seconds of the show when people post the
Something about
inevitable
Ben
time code on the
What
subject.
time we talk
Dude,
about?
question
Something about
mark?
PlayStation. I don't know.
That's
It's a tough one, but yeah.
inspired.
So just a reminder: the PAX panel is on Monday, 11:15 a.m.
Next week's
I'll leave-
episode in a day.
Yeah, pretty much. It's weird.
In a day.
I'll leave a link in the description to details, but if you can't catch it live, the show will basically air exactly the same as always. So I'll still record the PAX panel and have it up on Friday. So that is.
Will that
all
include the
good.
Q&A? Is there a restriction on us
Don't believe
in
so.
any way there? PAX
No.
isn't like gonna. Is it also? Is it totally? It's just on Twitch. Like it's
Correct.
there's no like tickets kind of thing the way PAX would normally.
No, totally free pass to watch all the panels, which I think is a plus.
People are getting to see us for free. That seems they should pay. It seems like we're
Yeah,
we're
PAX should
of
probably pay us
value.
for
There
this.
should be-
Capitalist pig.
We should someone should pay us. We should get paid.
They can
So
pay
overall
us
with
in.
this show, somebody
pay
should
you.
be
John
paying
Wick
us for this,
sales.
right?
There should be someone
Right?
paying. This is
And this is where the audio starts to fade down.
this is where I find out that
The
all of you
credits
are
start to
being
roll, and it's
Yeah,
like,
we're all getting paid.
Yeah.
but you're not.
Play, Watch, Listen has been brought to you by
All right, we'll
Play,
see
Watch,
you
Listen
all.
is filmed before a live studio audience.
Well, maybe next week it will be, and we'll see you all there.
It will be.
Yay.
Bye, everybody.